Welcome to the June 11th, 2025 BAR Large Meeting in the Public Meeting Room at 2 George Street. My name is Steve Ramos, and I'll be serving as chairman this afternoon for items 1 through 3. The other board members present this afternoon are Luda Subject, James Metters, Seton Brown, Joel Trantham, and Jay White. Seton Brown will be recusing for items 1 through 3. As will Mr. White. Mr. White will also be serving as chair for items 4 through 7. City staff present are Robert Summerfield, the Director of Planning and Preservation. Mr. Summerfield is filling in for BD Wortham Galvin this afternoon. And staff architect Lawrence Courtney and staff architectural planner Brad Thomas. Applicants have been required to submit any documents in advance of the meeting. Staff will control the slide presentation that includes everything submitted by the applicant by the deadline in accordance with submittal requirements. Applicants simply need to ask staff to advance to the next slide during the presentation. Applicants, staff, and board members are required to give their name when speaking. Do we have the clicker today?
Yes.
So there is a clicker at the podium.
Usually works.
Usually works. This meeting is being recorded and live streamed to the City of Charleston public meeting channel on YouTube. Your appearance here is your consent to be recorded. The order of the meeting will be as followed. Introduction and overview of the project by city staff to the board and for the public. The next will be the applicant presentation, a 10-minute time limit, or as determined by the chair, and with any questions by the applicant, board, or staff. Any and all presenters should clearly state their name for the record. Persons affiliated with the project, be it owners, developers, designers, consultants, etc., should speak during the applicant's portion rather than public comment. During the public comment, all applications are part of a public meeting. Written public comments were due by noon the day prior to the meeting, and any received comments have been transmitted to and considered by board members. Written comments will not be read aloud during the meeting unless requested by a member of the board and with permission by the chair. Any member of the public who wishes to be heard in person on an agenda item at this time is requested to state their name and address for the record and to be reminded that there is a 2-minute time limit for these remarks unless extended by the chair. Applicant does not respond to comments made during this public comment portion. Next, city staff comments and recommendation, followed by an applicant response or clarification to the public comments and city staff comments and recommendation. This response time has a 5-minute limit, and the applicant does not have to use the applicant response period if they do not feel it necessary. Next will be board discussion and vote. Applicant presentation is over at this point and public comment is closed. Applicant may clarify inaccurate information when recognized by the chair by raising a hand and waiting to be called on. Board members will be polled by the chairperson for comments and for the vote on a motion. The chair shall reread a motion verbatim, and the board members making the motion should correct the chair if he or she has not reread the motion accurately. Once a motion is in proper order and recorded and seconded, each member when voting should respond yay in favor or nay in favor. Results will be posted on the city website. Just a reminder that item number 7 has been withdrawn by the applicant. That's 275 Hugie Street. So if you're here for that item, feel free to leave. We do have some public comments for item number 3106 Cumming Street. There were 3 comments submitted. And last, as a reminder, please turn off all cell phones and other potentially disruptive devices. Please limit your comments to architecture only. Comments related to zoning, such as parking, traffic, and lot coverage, as well as livability department concerns, are not the purview of this board and cannot be voiced here. And with that, we'll move on to the agenda. item number 1, which is a review of the minutes from the April 9th, 2025 meeting.
Move for approval, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say yay.
Yay.
Yay. Okay. The motion passes. Next will be the application for 162 Ashley Avenue. Mr. Summerfield,
71 George Street.
you know what? I was looking at the last agenda. 71 George Street. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so 71 George Street, this is a request for final approval of the mock-up panel. This application is, show where it's at now?
Well,
I beg everyone's indulgence. This is my first time running the BAR meeting. I'm used to the BZA meeting, so if I get something a little out of order, please bear with me.
it is in Holston Village. It is new construction. It is.
Oh, so we give all of that.
Light District 3, and it's in the old and historic district.
Awesome. It's also owned by the College of Charleston Board of Trustees, and the applicant is, and God help me, I'm really bad at names, Little Diversified Architectural Consulting. And there's a representative from them that's going to speak that I don't want to massacre their name. So, and as you can see, this is where it's at on George Street. And now, Mr. Chairman, I think we're ready for applicant's presentation.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ryan Bing. I'm with Little. We are the architects for this project. Also joining from Little is Ryan Moskowiak. Representing the College of Charleston, we have Mark Powlin, who's the project manager there. We also have Christy Scholes, who's the director of architecture and engineering for the college. From Hood Construction, who's the contractor, we have Thomas Scruggs, who's the senior project manager there. In the lead up to this mock-up review, we've been working closely with Hood Construction. And we do want to take a minute to acknowledge their responsiveness and their commitment to making improvements to the panel, especially with the brickwork where we've seen substantial progress in recent days. That said, let me walk you quickly through the mock-up panel. On the further left side, we have this brick corbelling. That's the white brick corbelling. That's the detail that surrounds our main entrances. And moving over to the right, we have our typical storefront openings. There's stepped brick in the jambs that runs vertically and terminates at a purple brick header. Over top of our first floor storefront opening, we have metal composite panel. Over top of our second floor storefront, we have fiber cement planks that are held with a concealed fastener rain screen system. All of those elements, all of these elements are visible and a part of our George Street elevations. They're also part of the Leaf Street elevations. Moving over to the side of the panel, over here, you can see our brick reveal, our repeating brick reveal details. These provide visual depth and texture, and they're consistent with the Cummings Street facade. And they also flank the exterior stair that sort of projects towards George Street. Regarding our on-site review yesterday, we are in discussions with the contractor and working on addressing a few details that we discussed yesterday. To quickly recap, we have a metal composite material coping profile as designed is intended to replace the brake metal that is currently installed at the cap of the mock-up panel. There's a sill over the fiber cement that should be embedded into the brick, so there's not a visible gap. An aluminum trim profile is to be added to capture both the top and bottom of the fiber cement and cleanly return to the window head below, such that the cut end of the fiber cement is not visible from street level. The sealant and the exposed lintel is to be a brick and mortar color, sort of a weighted average blend of those colors. The metal coping over the white corbel brick is to be fully enclosed. We also have sections and elevations that we can pull up if need be. Given the overall progress and level of cooperation we've had as a team, we are requesting approval of this mock-up with comments.
Thank you. Is there any questions from the board?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
So I visited the site today and have you had documents on site to build the mock-up? Or since the mock-up began, have the documents changed? You say you've had good communication. I just want to make sure I understand why what's built doesn't match what's in the plans.
Run the scope back with the like this. Yes, they do have a set of complete set of construction documents.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
With no more questions, we will now open it up for public comment. Is there anybody from the public wishes to be heard on this matter? Hearing none. We will move to city staff comments and recommendation.
So staff wanted to note that there was no hardscape elements represented with the mock-up. Sample panel, the site has been reviewed separately, however, and it's the intention to continue to match the existing site pavers and elements, so we want to acknowledge that. The coping shown is not correct. I think that was kind of discussed in the applicant's presentation, and will actually be a preformed metal panel system, which is represented in what they have presented in form, but is not this material. So staff will be reviewing this detail and are comfortable that the intended solution will work to everybody's satisfaction. The sealant and MEP color were discussed as mentioned. Staff has proposed that one generalized brick mortar blend color would work for the primary brick sealant at the control joint and the sealant around windows and doors. The color for the loose lintels and any MEP or other items in or on the brick wall that visually need to disappear. Again, it sounds like the applicant is fully on board with that. And then it was also noted by the applicant in our review that the GFRC spandrels above and within the window panels are to have a secondary layer behind them. This is to be painted black as to be visually inconspicuous and to better seal edges. With that, staff has would request a condition on approval of this mock-up to include that the applicant will work with staff to find the generalized brick mortar blend color that will work for the primary brick and other elements noted above. And with that, staff is recommending approval with board and staff conditions.
Now we'll open it up to board discussion and a vote.
First,
Applicant rebuttal.
Yes, the applicant has an opportunity to address city staff comments.
We wanted to just thank you for the comments, and we'll take them into consideration. Thank you.
Now the board can discuss and vote.
Mr. Chairman, I'll start. So I visited the site today and I appreciate the time you spent with me. But, you know, the mock-up is an opportunity for you to show what this project is going to look like when it's completed. And it's not complete. It doesn't match what's on the plans. They just don't match. Flashing stops short of the brick on the left shoulder. There's actually a section of flashing that doesn't cover the brick. It just stops short. The flashing doesn't cover where the brick is in another second application. And I'm just not sure I understand, Mr. Chairman, why the mock-up can't be right, because this is going to be the guide for the rest of the project. And I think that it should be. And well, so I'm not in favor of the mock-up being approved today.
I think in reviewing this mock-up, there were some successful elements that I was able to kind of acknowledge. Not a complete and total understanding of the building. I think the depth of the facade, I thought a lot of the panels, like the fiber cement panels, I know a lot of times this board discusses whether or not those are appropriate for buildings, and applications like this is installed. This is where I could actually see the most successful implementation of, you know, fiber cement panels that are here and how they're concealing. I do agree that the mock-up should reflect the as finished conditions of the project to show that they can be successfully executed too. So I support kind of James's or Mr. Matter's comment there.
we're back to this issue with markup panels, which we facing again and again with the applications. The markup panel will be there for duration of the construction, and whatever is will be constructed should be compared to markup panel, but we have a complete, not markup panel which should represent the construction. So often enough, we just ask to correct these issues, and we can come back and see if they are corrected and then approve, and then we're done. But not at this point. So I'm not in favor of approving this markup panel at this time.
I would just echo my fellow board members. I think the design has promise. I think it's a handsome design, but as noted, it's not yet complete. And all those joints and junctions of materials are, I think, that a lot of what we focus on, and they're just not there yet. So I would echo those comments. Would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to defer the mock-up panel before that sounds.
Referral for board and staff comment,
Including board and staff.
including board and staff comments. Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor, say yay.
Aye.
Aye. Is that an aye?
Yep.
Okay. The motion passes.
Staff will be in contact about how that.
Thank you all for your time.
Okay, next, we will be moving on to application number 266 George Street.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so 66 George Street, this is also in Charleston Village, which is Council District 8. This is new construction for a new signage package that would be used for the campus. This is in the old and historic district. The owner is the College of Charleston, represented by Laura Worley. I think I said, Laura. Yeah, she's on the phone. Oh, well, you see, she wouldn't know if I said it wrong, you. And so while we're saying 66 George Street, the proposed signage package is for the college. And so this would be signage that we would then be potentially seeing anywhere throughout the campus area. And yeah, there's the
Is the applicant here?
Good afternoon, I'm Ron Minchuk, I'm Vice President for Marketing and Communications at College of Charleston. Laura Lee is on maternity leave, so I'm here with my colleague Alfred Hall, who's our Creative Director, and we're representing this application. I just want to give you a quick bit of background and context before I turn it over to Alfred to walk you through the signing proposal. The college has met multiple times with city staff, including Mr. Summerfield and BD, and extremely helpful in providing us feedback and responsive to those revisions. What you're looking at is a product that came about through much back and forth. Just to give you an idea of the impetus for this proposal, we've recently renamed a number of our academic schools. We've consolidated some academic schools and renamed some of our schools. So we have a practical need to install new signage to reflect those new names. We've also recently done some new branding at the college. So you'll notice in the package you have sort of a weave tapestry design and also a block C, what we call the block C. A lot of that has been incorporated into our branding. And so that further necessitates updates to our signage around campus. In addition, we have a number of old signage, particularly standalone letter signage that is old and faded. and in some cases can't be seen anymore and is decades out of date, so we need to update those. And then lastly, just the general visibility of the college is so important to us. We, as you know, are a hub of the community, a cultural center of the community. We have about 40,000 visitors on campus annually for tours and plays and musical performances. Paleta was just over there last week. And so it's really important to us that we are visible within the city as we are such an important cultural resource. But our overarching goal today is to receive approval on this signage system so that going forward, as we have new additions, we have a template to work through and can expedite the process working with the DAR and city staff. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Alfred Hall, who's our creative director, and who's the creative genius behind this plan. And he'll walk me through some of the highlights and we'll be happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon, Alfred Hall, Creative Director for the College of Charleston. So I kind of want to walk you through the four major sections of this. I know I only have about 7 to 10 minutes. It's quite extensive. If I need to revise anything, just let me know and I can back up a little bit. So as Ron said, we have undergone several branding initiatives, both with the college brand itself and its visual identity system. And this signage is meant to reflect that on our buildings. So you can advance to page 6. All right, so first we want to start off with institutional signage. That's next page, one, yes, 6. So institutional signage that we propose to be affixed to the college's buildings. This is a aluminum frame with a vinyl insert. They are in 4 locations around campus, 4 proposed locations around campus, some of them at eye level, some of them elevated. Keep advancing.
You have a clicker.
Oh, I do. Okay. All right, that's good. Okay. So proposed locations of Craig Hall on the side of George Street Apartments, on Warren Place, Satilli, and the first one was on the side of Health Services, and that is Warren Place number 1. Okay. All right, moving on to our building identity program design standards. So as Ron intimated, we have a lot of new schools coming online. Right now, we are faced with the challenge of, apart from legacy signage not being effective in terms of being visual, a number of the school names are going to change. Our goal was to come up with a brand standard that could not only resolve some of the current issues, but be able to be carried forward as a design standard for all of our buildings. Okay? And we kind of built off what we knew the board had already approved. So we're keeping the college's standard word mark and using our brand system lettering to define what building it is. Some of them are elevated, as School of Education, for instance, would have to be updated immediately as that has been separated. And the goal here is to get the College of Charleston more visible. Now, pardon me for rushing through this because again, it's kind of extensive. If you have questions, we can kind of come back to that. Okay. This is Harbor Walk over by the aquarium. And again, a bit of combination of both some of the brand stuff as well as the institutional signage. Okay. All right, this is the entrance to Cumming Street. Again, something that is new in that space, but we're fixing signage to that wall. These are blade signs for Marty's Place and the Verde Cafe. And then the last part is our wayfinding signage. With 40,000 plus visitors to the college's grounds every year, we found it is a necessity to have better directional signage, not only for people transiting through the campus, but people getting from parking garages, our student visitors. So we have proposed a wayfinding signage system and also proposed placement of that wayfinding signage. Some of it is freestanding, as the first 3 references are, and the rest of them are post mounted. Some are affixed to light posts and some are proposed freestanding posts. And then lastly, we are proposing an art installation for Rivers Green. And it is made out of aluminum. And there's just a location map of kind of where the signage is to be placed. Any questions, anything that I need to?
Any board questions?
I do have one. I see a lot of graphics there. What do they represent as a college and why?
So when we undertook our branding campaign, and I'll kind of go back to the very beginning, this tapestry represents the experience of the college. We actually used some design elements that are evocative of some of the college's building and architecture in the pattern. We have already started using that intra-campus, and it is actually permeating throughout all of our branding and communication materials. So it is a design element that represents the myriad of possibilities that the college has.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman. I think it was 3 aluminum frames with the vinyl inside. Exactly, you change that out.
Yeah, so those frames are designed to have, I would say that this artwork is going to be fairly standard. Our concerns when we were designing these was obviously durability. If we had to change the artwork out, we wanted to do that at a cost-effective way. And I think working with a couple of our vendors, we decided this spring-mounted aluminum framing system is the best way to go. Obviously, we live in a hurricane zone, so we looked at dye-bond metal and some other solutions. We figured that would, again, from a cost standpoint, be cost prohibitive to replace. We also had some concerns about how shall I put it, the heightened risk of it being defaced, and then again the cost of having to replace the panel. So that's why we decided to go with 9-5.
But the artwork, the text within the frame it's interchangeable.
In theory, if we decided to update the brand visuals, we could interchange it. But what you see there is representative of what we would want to put in there. Mainly just our word mark and branding and our brand element tapestry artwork.
A question for city staff. I know Brad is the signage guy. So if I understand this correctly, we would be voting on their signage package, but then in theory, each individual sign would then be submitted to staff for approval.
Correct.
So,
Which is a part of my presentation.
Okay.
so Mr. Hall. It's making the college more visible. I understand about the legacy signage. I just wanted to, it seemed to me that, most of the signage, and I get the building name, you know, where am I? The science building, physics building, the math building, language, health. But every one of them also has College Charleston, you know, which makes the signage bigger. I mean, at some point in time, as I was reading through this, I felt like, I mean, I guess I now know I'm on the College Charleston campus, but do we need to put such big, I'm gonna use the term kind of advertising on every one of these signs that says College Charleston? And then it has the legacy name. It seemed overpowering to me as I was looking through this presentation. I was just wondering if y'all had conversations about that. You know, once you're on the campus, once you get even to a legacy building one time, if you're a student, then you know where you're going the next time. So this is primarily for those people who are coming on the campus for the first, second, or third time, or visitors, or just people with interest, tourists. It almost kind of smiled because I felt like, oh, wow, so you see College Charleston everywhere. I was just almost overwhelmed. That come up as in any of your conversations with the vendors?
Yeah, so we had a discussion with regard to how we would handle this. I think one of the challenges that we do have is that we simply, while we are an urban campus, people have trouble figuring out where the bounds of the campus are. Even when we're dealing with what I would call more institutional signage and stuff that's permanently affixed to the building, that is a little, in some cases, indiscreet in terms of how people who are transiting the campus on a short-term basis will view some of that stuff. So we're focusing at it not only just from a student aspect who would go to a particular building for science or whatever, but also the college's footprint with regard to the campus for when people come to visit. So let's say you're on a tour, you come here for second Sunday, where are the bounds of the college's campus? Let me back up a little bit. We've tried to address that a little bit intra-campus again with some of the light post branding, but we realize that there are some spaces that we could take advantage of that show, you know, to viewers that the College of Charleston campus is here. So we proposed on the sides of obviously of some dorms, health services, which are not necessarily functional buildings, but we do feel that it's important for us as a part of this community to kind of mark out where the College of Charleston is. And without quote unquote using advertising, we do feel that our branding, you know, kind of represents what the college is about. And we feel it's a good compromise in terms of how we're approaching, you know, marking the campus and the name. I mean, we looked at some other universities, obviously the Clemson and USC, you go there and, you know, you can't trip over a brick without seeing something marked on the side of a building. So we think it's a good compromise in terms of how we've handled not only where we've chosen to put some of the what I would call institutional graphics, but also how those balance out with what we're doing in terms of affixing permanent signage to buildings.
Any other questions?
All right, so I just kind of said, I love those vibrant colors. I thought those-
The second that I really did appreciate that. It was a very nice.
At this point, we will open it up for any public comment. Is there anybody from the public that would like to speak for this item?
Grant Gilmore, Director of the Historic Preservation Community Planning Program at the College of Charleston. I'd like to speak in support of the signage situation from personal experience. And the 11 years I've been here, the College of Charleston has been challenged by branding. I've run into numerous people from the public on the streets that had no idea that there was a College of Charleston here since 1770. So anything that the college can do to improve that relationship with the public in a discreet way that the Board of Architectural Review would be supportive of, I think is a win for the entire city. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there anybody else from the public? Okay. At this point, we'll hear city staff comments and recommendation.
So as mentioned, staff has met with the applicant. We've met with them, I think a few times, most recently, this past April, to give them feedback on, what, we could support from staff, what we thought, might require, some revision, and then what we would have, some potential, concerns with. During those meetings, as mentioned, they were very good. College of Charleston, staff, left the team with the impression that they agreed with many of our comments. It should be noted that the version, though, that was submitted is essentially the same version that we reviewed back in April. As a result of that, we do have a number of comments that we had made at that time that will be bringing into the record related to different aspects of the sign package. As Mr. Chairman, as you kind of alluded to and stole my thunder a little bit, once this package is approved by the board, specific permits for specific signage would still need to be applied for with the city, and those would be reviewed by staff, but those wouldn't come one by one to the board. Again, that's, I think, the college's intent with creating a comprehensive plan, not just to make it a cohesive effort, but also get a kind of blanket architectural review approval from the board, and then work with staff on individual signage. Anything in this package that is interior to the college, and this again is an important point based on some of the graphics you saw, and the fact that they've mentioned that they've already started to integrate some of this signage. Anything in this package that is interior to the college and not visible from the public right of way is not under the BAR purview during the permitting process. And so, you know, the interior signage along walkways and things like that, that is completely up to the college's discretion to put those in, as long as they're not in the right of way. So with that, staff does have, just as we broke it down into, I think it's kind of 4 sections. Staff is in full support with no comments or requested for revisions related to the visual identity system, which can be found primarily on pages 4 and 5. The building identity program, which can be found from pages 12 to 39, or the Cumming Street entrance signage, which is 48 and 49. There were some minor comments, revisions that we were recommending to the hanging signage. This was found on pages 50 and 51. Staff is in support of the use and size of the right angle blade signs, but would, again, in keeping with board principles, look to have a single logo type used. I think right now they're showing 2 different, maybe different examples. We would be looking to have just one logo on the blade signage, again, keeping with the board's what we call them, priorities, principles, the board's principles with regard to signage. We did want to make a note on the wayfinding signage, which is pages 52 to 57. That any pole wayfinding signage that is within any right of way, which would include anything that would be on the sidewalk, approach into the sidewalk from a building that has 0 lot line. Anything like that would require the city's design review committee, which is an internal staff review board of the city that deals with anything within the public right of way. They'd have to get approval for those for any locations, and that the wayfinding signage may require, again, some encroachment agreements, depending on exactly where it's at, and agreements that may already exist with the college with regarding use of light poles and other things. Staff is in support of the following with some specific conditions. Institutional signage and artwork variance requests. These are pages 6 through 10. And in this case, any signage affixed to the buildings would require to go through a mortar or equivalent joint and not through the masonry. So we want to be very careful on the placement of those signage. A specific permit application will be required to show hardware fastener types and how it will be and affirm how it would be affixed to the building. The general concepts of this institutional signage is supported, but the size and locations of specific signage, it would be addressed in the specific permits. and will be subject to staff revision requirements on a case-by-case basis as we review the building history, and does the sign of the sign block any significant architectural features. So as a part of this, we are not affirming any specific size or location with this package, but in concept, staff is in support of the effort regarding those institutional signs and the artwork variance request. Regarding the Harbor Walk School Engineering, Computing, and Mathematics signage that's represented on pages 40 and 41 and 44 and 47. Again, any signage affixed to the building would be required to go through that mortar or equivalent joint and not through the masonry. Specific permit application will be required to show the hardware, fastener types, and affirm that it will be affixed to the building, and affirm how it will be affixed to the building. The general concept is supported, but again, we will need to see final dimensional requirements and during the permitting process, and may require revisions on a case-by-case basis. Support it's not affirming the specific size or location that as it may be depicted. Also, it should be noted that as a part of this, we are not saying that we would approve banners to be too close together on a corner. So like both corners with banner signage. And then finally, there were a few items that staff was not fully in support of, and we would expect maybe some alternative thoughts there. On page 9, the upper right image, the institutional signage artwork variance request. This was a photographic image that would not be considered artwork and would be considered essentially advertising, and therefore we would not be looking at the ability to approve that in its current form. On page 11, likewise, on the right image, this is a window graphic. Per our code, window graphics may only be 20% of the allowable coverage. Anything larger would not be approvable. In addition, these images are not considered, we wouldn't consider them artwork. They appear more to be advertising and therefore would not be approved. These images are shown on pages 6 and 8 are considered, the images as shown on page 6 and 8 are artwork, but we would look to see them to be reduced to the 20% window coverage. Again, the intent of larger windows to be having that visibility so that they would be appropriate and approvable. And then finally, on pages 42 and 43, back to the Harbor Walk display, the signage type is approvable, akin to a monument sign that is in our ordinance, but the specific images that are shown would not necessarily be considered artwork, and as they appear to be more advertising based, and therefore wouldn't be approved. If the imagery were changed to include the logo or other wayfinding elements, or the art graphic at the bottom only, then that would be supported with staff. With all of that being taken in, if hopefully everybody got all that, staff is recommending conceptual approval with board and staff comments, with final review of a revised signage package by staff.
Thank you. Mr. Hall, would you like to make any response to staff comments?
So we did make some changes with regard to specifically Craig Hall, and I'm not quite sure if those comments that you had reflected kind of what we just submitted in terms of the last submission. So we did eliminate the images.
Okay.
Okay.
And we'll be happy to relook at that. BD did these comments quickly in preparation for the fact that she was going to be out of the country this week. So if we've got any of that.
In addition to the Tilly Theater, and I'm happy to provide you with a copy of this. We did reduce the size of the signage there, but I understand your concerns with regard to the content of those signs. So I think there's room for us to kind of go back and tweak some of that stuff. I think those were the only two things I just wanted to clarify.
Yes, sir. Those were the two, if you were non-starters for staff. Everything else is relatively minor.
Any other questions for me?
I guess I have a joint question.
Go ahead.
No, you go.
Matters.
So it sounds like there's been good, constructive conversation. It seems to me, and these are not my comments I'm gonna make during the board. But it seems to me that it's premature for this to be here. 'Cause, you talked for a long time about questions or things that you may have to work out with the college, and I'm not sure why all that's not done from March till now, or whenever these conversations started. There seems to be there's a lot up in the air still to give conceptual approval, just based on listening to both the college and to city staff. And this is important for the college so that they have good guidance, and it's important for the city because the college is a big part of the city. And so that's my comment.
So respectfully, I just want to make sure that we're clear. So while I did speak a lot, the lion's share of all of this was almost perfunctory, just to put it on the record. The only two areas that were of potential disagreement were those last two parts, which I think the applicant is indicating may have been already updated in a version that may not have been what BD had to review. So that produced those comments. And so we're happy to take a look at that and verify that those are updated, but even if they aren't, they're really only two locations where we had as conflicts. I don't think anything else was a conflict. It was more making it clear that there were some signs that would be looked at individually, because we were recommending as a sign package that the concept is great, but we want to see the actual sign on the building. I think it goes back to what you were talking about with the college, College of Charleston here, and then the identifier for the building. We want to see that at permit time for every building, and so we may request some revisions of that depending on how that comes in terms of if any sign were to potentially obscure any architectural element or anything like that. So we're trying to be clear on the record that in our recommendation on these, that wasn't carte blanche that we were approving any individual sign. We're recommending approval for the concept, and then as these sign permits come through, we would do an individual review to ensure that it's consistent with the design guidance that is in this plan that you would be reviewing, but then also taking into account the specific context of that building, if that helps at all.
So I guess,
Let me say,
yeah, go.
thank you. But it doesn't help me with my concern about us being synced with them, because we're trying to approve an overarching plan that they could have some flexibility with their design and be more decisive with it and submit something that there's a high likelihood that's going to be approved because the two themes are really synced with it. And I think that syncing is all I'm talking about. And even the follow-up answer, it means that there's still some detailing that has to be worked out. Yeah, it may be in the cities, but we may already have it. But we just, I think we need to make sure it's fully reviewed. That's it.
So, very quickly, there's two last items. Are they already represented changes in this package?
Yeah, so,
Can we look at it?
Yeah,
So can we point what is changed?
9 and 11.
Yeah,
can I, do I have access to it? Yeah. I mean,
he's typing it there.
it's shooting through there. All right, let's address the Tilly first. So as you can see,
That's page 11.
so when we submitted it the first time and met with BD and at the staff level, we were told that we couldn't have those windows at Tilly completely covered.
Yeah.
And so you can see there that we reduced it to the 20% of the window. Okay. if the board is still concerned about the content of those signs, and you do not think that it's adequate, then that's something that we can. revise.
And again, that's now informational signage. I think it had more graphic elements. And so now that is more informational signage. So this would be in keeping with what that comment was.
Already answered.
Correct, yes.
That's what I'm trying
Yeah.
to get, and
So that was, yeah, that was page 11 comment, and then there was a
And
page
then-
9 comment.
So page 9, we,
43,
so page 9, we had images in each of those frames that we will concede look like advertising, and then we moved just our
Back to the
pattern. Okay.
And again, that is in keeping with what we were making the comment about.
I had a specific question about the line 9 too.
42, 43, what we doing there? Kind of same issue.
Yes, the exact same issue.
42, 43.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. So, again, in our original sort of proposal, Harbor Walk had vertical signs, and if you are familiar with the building, there are vertical mounts on each corner. So, a right angle. So if this is the side of the building, there are mounts for signs here and mounts for signs here. Originally, we mounted signs to every corner. It was, you guys told us that was too much. So we revised that and cut the signs in half.
Yeah, so again, I believe that this is in line with what that comment was aiming to achieve.
And again, we had images, let me back up a little bit. We had images in those monument sign frames, which we again changed out to the tapestry.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we're good.
It's answered.
Yes, all of those we would not support have been addressed. So my apologies for creating confusion.
Can I ask one question with like 9, just a specific question about the advertising? It appears that this has already been changed since that comment was done. When I was looking at that, my assumption was that the advertising element of that was that it said extraordinary happens here, not necessarily the logo of the Charleston, or not the logo of the College of Charleston or the artwork. Is that correct in my assumption, or was that based on a prior?
No, the artwork where you see currently the tapestry artwork, those were more, I can't remember exactly what the images were, but
photographs.
yeah, they were photographs. They were basically advertising elements of what the college does and weren't artistic. But that's just a tagline or whatever for the university. That would not be advertising.
Artwork.
That's what,
Artwork.
Yeah, I mean, that's just a part of their, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I guess with that, staff would like to strike their staff does not support comments from any potential motion as those have been addressed at this time.
that would be the last 3 comments.
Correct, the last 3 comments.
More discussion?
So I'm gonna stick with it, Mr. Chairman. For me, there's a lot of change here at the meeting, and that those things just make me uncomfortable. Not just sitting on this board, but on any board that I'm sitting on, when there's significant change made at the meeting. It just can be a misunderstanding. It can be everything's fine, but it seems like it'd be best where I sit to make sure that everything's fine, and then I'll give you what my comments were. Everywhere you look, everywhere you see a sign, it has the College of Charleston on it. At some point in time, sign after sign after sign, you know you're on the College of Charleston. I get advertising, and I get legacy, and I get some people need more signage than others, and you need to design your signage for the person that needs it the most. And I get that.
May I address?
Did you need to make a clarification?
Just wanted to address Mr. Mayor's comments regarding, in the context of this book, it does seem like a lot because every page is college, college, college. There's a slide here, I think it's at the end. We have a huge campus. I stretch across numerous city blocks, hundreds and hundreds of square feet. So in this book, I would agree with you, it's a college every page, but when you're on campus and we find this all the time. We can talk to people on King Street, visitors on King Street, who have no awareness that one block away, there's the most beautiful campus in America and, National Historic Landmarks. And so it's all about visibility. So in the context of how big our campus is and spread out across the neighborhoods, that's a blessing from the college. It's the way that we're knitted into the community. But taken as a whole, when you see how big campus is, it really isn't overwhelming. It's just that we're looking at it in isolation, in a vacuum. But if you were to walk around the entire campus, you'd be sweating today if you walked around the entire campus. But it really is tastefully done and conservative if you look at the big picture. But I do appreciate what you're saying, but please recognize how big we really are in terms of the city. That's all, that was all I want to say.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you. And I'm looking at it from the context of, we have multiple institutions in Charleston that are like the College of Charleston. No, I'm sorry, they're not like it at all. They're different, but they are institutions, right? And so they need their own identity also. We want to not have a series of signs that identifies MUSC, identifies College of Charleston, and then Citadel, and then, so that was my feeling. I agree with I understand what you're saying. In some cases, I thought the lettering was too large, and in some cases, I thought the proportions seemed off. The biggest example for me was the large CFC letters coming from behind the lobby. When you look in, you can see the silhouette of an individual standing there with the CFC letters, and that seems very, very large and overpowering if I'm walking down the street. And, there's already signs there that say what it is, and maybe this is just because I went to a small school. I have any idea. But those are my comments, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Metters, I do agree with, and I think one slide that maybe highlights the point specifically, and I don't know if there's a comparison at where these individual instances might need to come back to the board for our review, but on slide 29, and going to slide 29.
It's slide 29.
Or page 29, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Nope, too far. One more.
So we've got the College of Charleston logo, on the top of the building. There's the name of the building there. There's then the College of Charleston repeated with the institution underneath it. And it seems like across most of the buildings, the College of Charleston is integrated both on a significant, element for viewing from a distance, and then also at street level in a multiple other areas. And so I think a refinement and an understanding, I don't know that as a board member, I would want to prescribe how that should be done. I think that as each one of these applications come to staff to take into account the specific architectural features of that building, but how to necessarily maybe manage the scale of that lettering as it relates to that specific building is probably a way that I think those concerns about the number of times it is repeated across the campus could be addressed.
But that's exactly why the staff saying we will review every single sign that and approve. So that's too premature to even look at it. I think we are looking at the concept overall.
And the concept, there has been some confusion, and I just hope we can get the confusion completely.
I think they addressed it
Okay,
to me.
that's fine.
So
I think the confusion is that the city architect put forth her comments early. She was ahead of the schedule, so the applicant had already addressed them, so there wasn't that there was a change that occurred like yesterday, I think it's just.
Yeah, what we are presented with, what is
Correct.
correct.
Yes. And these would be ones that if there was an approval, this is the version of the signage package that would get approved. This would be the version that would be before the board for approval, which is why, again, I felt comfortable striking those last three staff conditions.
I also have a couple of other just small conditions that I think I would note here as a board is where the board feels at this level to delegate the staff to make all decisions and where we would want things to come back. And I would imagine on the artwork installations, which are referenced, I believe, on page 59, I think that 58 and 59, those are items where I think the board would want to review what an artwork 3D sculpture in the middle of the space might look like, rather than just delegating that directly to staff at this point. And then I had a couple of other small comments on the Harbor Walk vinyl signs, where those are extended off of the building, that I'm in favor of the mounting mechanism and the details as established by staff, but that in instances where nobody's walking by that, there's not an instance to be defaced, those might be something that needs to be more substantial of a signage rather than vinyl mesh. And I think those are just two specific comments where I would think things, I think generally the comments as laid out by staff are thorough, and well address the points that I would have had looking at this package.
It's very complex and it will go in probably months and maybe years before it will be done. So, so the concept is there. It's just that's what we are looking at. And I think we need to recognize it. Anyway, I can make a motion. Approve conceptual approval with board and staff conditions and final review of revised signage package to staff. Unless staff will feel that some of the signage needs to be presented to board again. Does that make sense?
I'm gonna read that back to you. Conceptual approval with board and staff comments with final review by staff, unless staff feels that a design needs to come in front of the board. Mr. Trantham suggested that the CFC sculpture come forth to the board. Do you want that in your motion?
No.
Okay.
Could be
Okay. Is there a second for the motion?
We have one, maybe the application says final approval is what we were seeking. I think the motion was for conceptual.
It would be final by staff
Okay.
as with any final revisions. Yeah, that was the motion. Yes.
I will second the motion.
Just a point of clarification too, do we need to include in this motion that we're striking the final 3 points, or is that in the comments by board that the staff do not support?
We certainly could. Would you like me to add that to the motion? So conceptual approval with board and staff comments. With the exception of the last 3 staff comments.
Noted as staff does not support. Just for clarity.
Gotta learn how to write faster. Okay, I'm gonna start from the beginning. Conceptual approval with board and staff comments, with the exception of the last three staff comments noted as staff does not support, with final review by staff unless the staff feels it necessary for board approval. And so I will, again, second the motion. All in favor, respond yay in favor?
So you want to call us out by name for this one?
Yeah.
Yes. Mr. Trantham, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Medic?
Nay, not.
Yeah, in favor.
The chair is yay in favor, so the motion passes 3-1. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Yours,
Yes.
yeah. Also, time,
Mhm.
edit, and, order county, technical copy. That work.
Yeah, I just figured, well, and I figure it's an amazing thing. I mean, I figured as an element right inside that it would be one day.
So, bottom line, it's very subjective.
Mhm.
How they need to more.
Okay, we have moved on to one more College of Charleston project. This is item 3106 Cumming Street.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, 106 Cumming Street. So this is in the Radcliffe Borough neighborhood within the Council District 4. This is a site that is not rated, however, is circa 1964 building that is being requested for demo. And this is within the old city district. This request is for full demolition of what was the YWCA building. Owner is College of Charleston, applicant is Leolio Architecture.
Would the applicant like to present?
Yes, thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for your attention to this. My name is Jay White. I'm a principal with Leolio Architect and representing the College of Charleston. If I might ask for an additional 5 minutes, just in the event that we might need this. So no more than 15, I promise I'll make it as quick as I can. I'll speak for a few moments and then I'll be followed by President Hsu from the College of Charleston, who will close. We fully recognize sensitivity and importance of the site, this place here on Cumming Street, as once being the home of the Cumming Street YWCA. Fully grasp the significance of that, and this application is intended to convey that, our commitment and the college's commitment to honoring the legacy of the Y's work on this site and not memorializing it, but commemorating it. And I use I make that distinction intentionally because the Y still exists. They still continue doing their good work in this community. They sold this property about a decade ago. And before I start, I will also recognize and appreciate the engagement that we've had with the Historic Charleston Foundation, Preservation Society of Charleston, the Neighborhood Association, and the executive leadership of the YWCA in getting us to this point and where we might go from here. Building, being from 1964, is a mid-century building, although we argue that its significance is more of a cultural nature and not an architectural one. In this report, we have our typical drawings and photographs of the building in question. We also have attached a report from Brittany Lavelle-Tula that goes into a great bit of detail about the legacy of the Y's work on this site during the middle and end of the 20th century. And that will be the basis of how we might commemorate that work, but we won't be doing it alone. There's also a planned unit development that applies to this property that was placed here by the private developer to purchase the property from the YWCA about a decade ago. We didn't attach that because, well, HUDs are dry as dust, but there are a couple of provisions in it that are pertinent to this application, and I'll get into those in a moment. Here we've attached our typical use of sandboard maps to illustrate the changes in this part of the city over the last 100+ years. I'll back up really quickly and say, while it's not part of this application, it's pertinent to the overall project that we're pursuing, that all these houses were built upon one of the city's most prominent potter's fields. And that potter's field is a subject of our analysis, is something that we'll be looking into, and the removal of this building actually helps facilitate those studies. The GPR, for example, can't be fully executed until we can see what's underneath that slab. These photos are largely from the Avery Institute. They show the work and the lives of the Y throughout the 20th century. Building in the top left, we include just to show where they started. This was the single house that they first occupied up until the early 1960s when the present building was built. It was designed by Cummins and McCready, and I would characterize this building as being mid-century in era, but not necessarily in architectural spirit. This is a very workmanlike building. It was meant to be efficient and effective in housing the programs here, but it's not an embodiment of the spirit of the organization in the way that, say, the Avery Institute embodies the spirit of that organization. That building, you look at it, hell, it was for education. Here, this was intended to house the programs, and it really lacks some of the spirit that we have come to value with mid-century buildings. Although there are a few elements that I'll point out that we do find to be quite valuable. What we intend to do here, and this comes up in the plan unit development, there are provision in PUD that requires the project that gets built on this site to include some commemoration of the work of the Y during its tenure here on this site, and of Christine O. Jackson specifically, who was the executive director for most of those decades. That's in the PUD. That is a zoning requirement. They're bound to it. PUD will remain even though the College of Charleston has purchased the property. We're bound to doing that. The PUD also requires that we work specifically and directly with the leadership of the Y to establish that narrative. And you all know us well enough here at Leolio that we would always engage the community to write that narrative and come up with that space, that environment to commemorate that. Not just be a plaque on the wall, it has to have some sort of meaning, some sort of purpose. We don't know what that is right yet because we've not really continued our engagement into that level of detail. We have to get past this step first. This depicts the site, and as I alluded to earlier, being a building from the middle of the 20th century, it is unfortunately out of character with the historic context that surrounds it. Although I think AT&T did an even more successful job of being oblivious to that. Here are a few things that we wanted to highlight that we're going to retain. We're not sure, but we think this ironwork could be attributed to Philip Simmons. And that's purely based off of our observations of how tight those scrolls are. And you can see it definitely in the top left, that image of the handrail. Those scrolls start out completely closed and then open, and that's characteristic of this work. Same thing is true in the far right. The window screens exhibit similar craftsmanship. There's other elements, plaques and other pieces that are being documented and preserved. The mural that's on the interior is not terribly historic, but we've scanned it anyway. We're in the process of conducting HABS level documentation of the building for the record. But all those items will be retained part of the rest of the building. Here's some context photos just to show you what's surrounding. You're probably very familiar with this part now. These are detailed shots of the screen wall, here's brick wall that sits at the sidewalk. We think it's probably not quite as old as the building itself, but certainly not older. And the original signage, which you see in the top right, does not exhibit any of the craft and ironwork that the other railings did that I pointed out. So we do not interpret that as having any sort of architectural significance. And these are shots of the building as they are. Now, in our conversations with especially the preservation community, they wanted to know, well, what's this commemoration going to look like? Is it a room? Is it a garden? Is it a plaque? And this goes back to something I was saying earlier. We're not going to design that in a vacuum. Past this sheet and this slideshow is all of Brittany's research, and I'm not going to go through that in great detail, although you've all had an opportunity to review it. We need to engage with the membership of the Y, people that they represented to make sure that this speaks to that history with clarity and accuracy. We would never purport to do that on our own. But we really can't figure out how to do that until we know that this building is removed and something else is going to replace it. At this point, I'll actually turn it over to President Chu to close with a few remarks, and then I'll take any questions y'all might have.
Thank you, Jay, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. The College of Charleston fully recognizes the value of preserving history and deeply respect the work of this board. In this particular case, we believe the history of the property is more significant in the existing structure. That's why I want to reaffirm our strong and sincere commitment to properly commemorate both the YMCA and the Potter's Field that once occupied this site. This history matters to us, and we are committed to honoring it in a way that is respectful, lasting, and visible. As we move forward with plans for a new facility, the College of Charleston is fully committed to developing a thoughtful and comprehensive approach to memorialize the YMCA, YWCA legacy. We understand that a detailed and transparent plan is essential to building trust with the community, and we're currently working to ensure that such a plan reflects both historical accuracy and community voices. We have begun a conversation with community historians and cultural leaders to explore ways to incorporate storytelling, oral histories, and inclusive interpretation into the design and function of the new building. This might be curated installations or digital archives that recognize the contributions and experiences of those who convened at the YWCA across generations. What's most important is that the spirit of public engagement that characterized the YWCA will continue to shape the mission and programming of that space. In the coming weeks and months, we look forward to engaging with community partners like the Historic Charleston Foundation, the Preservation Society of Charleston, the YWCA leadership, and our own campus society, our own campus community to help shape what that commemoration will look like, whether through outdoor memorial space, the naming of shared areas, or interpretive design features. I believe we have an opportunity to create something that will make our shared community proud. So I want to reiterate, we understand the significance of this site, and the College of Charleston will find common ground to support both remembrance and responsible progress. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions y'all might have?
Questions? Good. Thank you. Okay, at this point, we will open it up for public comment. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak? Yes, sir. You could come to the podium.
Hello. I just
I need to speak into it.
Yeah, you're good. If you could just state your name before you make your comments.
Yes, so my name is Marcus McDonald. I'm the organizer of Charleston Black Lives Matter. And I'm here to speak in regards to this issue and for deferral and to there's more community involvement. Y'all spoke before at the board about how with the previous application, y'all needed more information on the different structures and different things they need on the outside and inside. I think community involvement needs to be done the same way. They said they have been doing some work with historians and different programmatic people. I think it also needs to be extended outside of organizations into doing surveys through the community. And I've heard a lot of that work's been done, but I think it needs to be completed. And if it's done that and then the scheduled date shows that they've actually done that actual community involvement, then I'd gladly approve. But right now, I think it needs to be deferred till we get that community involvement. I think there's some good examples that was mentioned earlier, like the Avery. I think also with the early college, then when their collaboration with CCSD and preserving the Wilmot Fraser facade and some of the things they have inside. I'm a substitute teacher, so I've seen the inside. I'm also was involved in the process of saving the facade of the Wilmot J. Fraser on the east side. So I think again, and CCSD did it, but as y'all know, they went to the bar and they had the community support with some of those things. So after they talked with them before. So I think that needs to be done first. I think it needs to be a priority and not something that's done afterwards. And yeah, again, I'm looking forward to seeing what that work looks like. I'm also an alumni at college, so it's something that I'm you know, certainly, and I live in downtown, so it's something that I'm really connected with. Also, my grandfather was really connected with the Y, Frank Houston. He used to drive activists from the Y to Marion Square, where we still be protesting today. But it just shows you just a little bit about some of the historical context. It's literally my granddad, he'd been talking about the Y his whole life. So something that's huge to the community, if it can be done to even include community activists, because that's who used to be in the building a lot as well. I think that'd be huge. To get back to the community in that way. So those are my thoughts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anybody else like to be heard? Mr. Gilmore?
Grant Gilmore speaking as a person employed by the College of Charleston, but not on behalf of the College of Charleston in my professional capacity as someone who worked with the African American communities throughout the United States and many places in the rest of the Americas for the past 30 years. And I'm going to make a larger point for the BAR as well. I haven't spoken in front of you very much. I try to keep in the background for a lot of what happens in Charleston. I applaud the College of Charleston's efforts so far at documentation and bringing in community involvement. My larger point is that buildings are physical manifestations in the landscape. And as we are the center of the preservation movement, this is not necessarily the hyperbole, but from my international colleagues, the preservation movement was birthed out of the city and what people could see physically in the landscape. As cities evolve and change, yes, we tear things down and build new buildings. The college is going to be tearing down College Lodge. My point to you is that these places and spaces, if we cannot save them, as Mr. McDonald has suggested, in a facade sort of way, to have at least some physical manifestation of that place and space incorporated into the architecture of the new building that's there, then documentation of many of these places ought to be a requirement for a demolition permit. Physical documentation, not just the people that were there, but also to the HABS level, Historic American Buildings Survey level, or at least some sort of effort in that regard, so that we at least have some sort of digital, because it eventually be digital, representation of that physical space in addition to written. That may be in the plans of the college down the line, but I would urge the Board of Architectural Review when approving demolition permits in the future that perhaps that be something that you would consider with your candidates for demolition. College has demolished in its history, nothing to do with anyone in this room, over 120 buildings outside of the bombardment of the American Civil War and the several fires that we've had in Charleston. I would argue that the College of Charleston has removed more built structures from our environment than any other entity. So we feel that, and this administration has certainly made the greatest strides ever in its history in supporting the documentation of these historic buildings and advocating for public discussion of the history of these places. And Lord knows we spend a lot of money on campus to try to keep things going, despite the best efforts of the state legislature to prevent that from happening. I think that's about all I have to say. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Is there anyone else that would like to be heard?
Anna Catherine Alexander with the Preservation Society of Charleston. We have appreciated the opportunities to speak with the project team on this request, and we would like to first commend the college for commissioning a comprehensive historical report that reinforces both the cultural and the architectural significance of the former YWCA building. As clearly outlined in that report, this building not only has strong associations with impactful civil rights activism and embodies the century-long legacy of the YWCA on the site, but it also retains remarkable integrity as a mid-century structure that has undergone very few changes since its construction. We are not supportive of this request for demolition on several fronts. First, based on the application materials and the site visit earlier this week, no compelling evidence has been presented indicating that structural deficiencies would necessitate demolition, nor has the feasibility of incorporating the building as part of a future redevelopment, either in whole or in part, been explored. Further, the argument that the building must be removed to facilitate site work and removal of potential burials that may be found on the site is not within the BAR's purview to consider, and therefore not grounds for demolition. And most importantly, to echo the comments that have been made by Mr. McDonald, as the college continues its engagement with the YWCA board and its associated community, all options for commemorating the powerful legacy of the Y should be on the table. If a decision on demolition has already been made, it calls into question the purpose of having this dialogue at all. Community involvement cannot be rushed on arbitrary timetables. Once a building's gone, it's gone forever. So we ask the board to defer this demolition request and call on the college to ensure that all avenues for honoring the architectural and cultural significance of this building are considered before proceeding with demolition design and development process. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, good evening. Lisa Jones, Historic Charleston Foundation. We've reviewed the request for the full demolition of the former YWCA building, and we really appreciate the project team meeting with us and communicating openly and regularly about the overall project's progress. We believe the project is moving in the right direction and appreciate the public meeting that was held on June 3rd. However, we do have concerns that this first public meeting did not seem to include many of the residents and was not representative of the community and history associated with the old Y. We would like to request at least one more public meeting be held before the demolition is considered to ensure that all the stakeholders are aware that the meeting is about demolition of the building and capturing the history of the YWCA specifically. As my colleague Anna Catherine stated, once the building is gone, it cannot be, that action cannot be undone. So we want to work together to make sure this process is as thoughtful as possible. A detailed plan would help the community feel comfortable that the history, cultural events, and the people who convened at the YWCA will be properly memorialized. Part of the plan should include storytelling, oral histories, and how the new building will carry forward the legacy of public engagement and public uses. This plan should be made public for comments from the community before the building is removed. In addition, it should include specific plans for the identification or relocation of human remains that may be identified through the GPR survey. Ideally, this plan should be in place before the building is demolished. We respectively request that more public engagement and planning be completed before the board considers approving the applicant's request for demolition. Thank you so much for your consideration.
Thank you. Is there anyone else from the public that would like to speak? Okay. At this point, we'll hear from city staff.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so the ordinance 54204.b offers criteria for reviewing demolition requests in the Old and Historic District, asking the Board of Architectural Review to consider, among other things, the historic architectural and aesthetic features of the structure, the nature and character of the surrounding area, the historic or culturally important use of such structure, and the importance to the city. This structure dates back to circa 1964, therefore it is considered historic. However, the structure is not listed on our current architectural inventory. It is an example, as has been mentioned multiple times, of mid-century modern, of which there are scant examples of that building style on the peninsula. However, this structure is, after staff's review, is not meritorious of architectural example of that style. It is, I think, as the applicant put it, much more utilitarian, if you would, compared to some other examples to which this board has worked closely to protect, like the building that is going to be a part of the Curtis Square Phase 2 project, which was much more representative of the mid-century modern. The building does not fit into the nearby context. If you'll remember your aerial on this, this building is in the middle of what today amounts to large surface parking lots with a large parking garage, a large building. So it is kind of a weird little island kind of unto itself there. And I know I'm editorializing a little bit on these comments of BD's, but that's my prerogative because she's not here. The applicant has provided a thorough historic preservation report that demonstrates that the building has cultural significance and therefore is important to the city for its association with the Young Women's Christian Association, YWCA, and the activities that have occurred within that building over multiple decades. Staff believe that anything from the building of architectural or socio-cultural significance, which can be salvageable, should be retained for possible reuse on the whatever the upcoming project amounts to be. It is noted that while a significant architectural work is expected to take place at this site and on the larger site that would be coming forward at some future date to this board, that it is that part is, as has been mentioned by a member of the public, is beyond the purview of the Board of Architectural Review. In keeping with the condition that exists within the PUD, so as was mentioned by the applicant, there is already a zoning condition that would apply that if this building were to come down for future development, that any future building on the site must make significant strides to commemorate the activities of this location and kind of that it's not landmark, but kind of the landmark element of what has gone on there. With that, staff is recommending the following condition, that the social cultural significance demonstrated in the BVL Historic Preservation Research Report be commemorated in a physical manifestation with a highly visible presence in the new construction project. Unfortunately, we don't know what that looks like yet because we don't know what the potential building will look like until after demolition. And so staff does not oppose the demolition and does request that staff condition 1 be included in the board motion. So I'm going to do something a little weird. I'm going to take off my acting city architect hat and board administrator and put on my city planning director hat. and just comment that, because one of the conditions to look at for demolition is significance to the city. So the site, part of the reason that condition was put on the rezoning and was adopted as a part of council's action to rezone it was because the activities of the site were important to the city, and acknowledgement of the people who worked out of the site and the accomplishments that they had and the impact that they had on the community is important. That said, the mission of the College of Charleston is also important to the city as well. The additional community benefit to the city of the college being able to reuse this site for student housing and to help facilitate moving student housing more to a central location adjacent to the campus, out of some of the neighborhoods, provides an opportunity to address some of the community livability issues that have occurred for years, but also our affordability crisis. If students are not renting the apartments and houses and things in the neighborhoods, then those potentially get freed up for housing for other folks that may be of a similar income bracket to students. And so there are some city goals that are attached to this. Again, taking that hat back off and going back to board administrator, again, BAR staff has no objection to this request with the proposed condition with that reinforces the zoning condition that already exists for commemoration of activities that occurred on the site. Thank you.
Would the applicant like to respond to any of the public or city staff comments?
Yes, very quickly, and thank you for everybody that spoke. We really appreciate that. That's part of what makes this process so valuable. We do welcome that condition. We know that the zoning, the PUD requires us to do something, but having it in the motion to allow us to demolish this building allows this board to then vet the success of that concept, see the subsequent building. So any condition that you put on it that we create some sort of commemorative space or environment is durable enough that if you don't see it, a conceptual review of the project follows, then that might imperil our conceptual approval. And we totally understand that, we totally agree with that. And we think that we need to get to that point so that we can really engage the community in earnest about what that space is going to be. There have been discussions about trying to preserve the facade, such as we did with Courier Square Phase 2 or with Early College High School, Wilmot J. Fraser campus. Those are very different circumstances because those buildings have both cultural and architectural significance. And we would argue that this building does not really have architectural significance. If it weren't for the people that built it, I don't know that we would really be having this conversation. If nobody's really jumped to the defense of the architecture, it's all the community group that built the building. And if you're going to do what we jokingly call facade-ectomy, if you do that and then move that up to the street, you've now created a new condition that misspeaks to the history of the building. It puts the building in a new relationship with the street that is not in keeping with its history, and then presents a false history. We wouldn't want to really go there. That's not really a preservation best practice. As far as the HABS documentation that's underway, Terracon has been retained by the College of Charleston, and early sketches you saw in one of those photos is their field work for that HABS documentation. So that is underway as well as photogrammetry of the interior, especially to capture things like the mural that's on the interior. As far as structural deficiencies, we know that when YWCA sold the building, it suffered under a great deal of deferred maintenance, but we do not make this application on the basis of structural deficiencies of the building. That's really just not pertinent to our argument, and therefore it's really not part of the consideration here. And beyond that, we look forward to hearing your discussion and deliberation motion and vote. Thank you for your time.
I got a couple of questions.
Yes.
Which you've already answered. I'm just confirming.
Sure.
As incorporating the structure into the final plan been explored, the answer is no, because it's really maybe not just the historic fabric of that building. It's just, it's not what incorporating this is. So I get that and I agree with it. You feel like, as Mr. McDonald was suggesting, that there's been enough communication with stakeholders? Or do you think we should have another round of that to make sure that people have an opportunity to speak about what's important?
We are having other rounds. Those are,
Before this vote on,
I don't think so, because I think that we can speak to the legacy of the Wise work without this building. I don't think that we need this bricks and mortar to properly honor what that organization did on this site for 2 generations.
and Terracon's got the HABs and documentation of the existing building. And the Potter's Field.
Some preliminary GPR has been done, but there's just so much detritus on the site. We've got to clean it up and do that proper.
And I think the last part, which is just kind of goodwill, but I guess it was part of the HUD documentation. You've said a few times that you can't plan on exactly how to commemorate this until this demolition is approved. I might be paraphrasing it, until this phase of the project is completed and you start moving forward to real planning.
It's really about moving into the design of the buildings that will follow and how this commemoration becomes part of that narrative.
And your commitment to that is significant.
It is.
That was it. That's it, Jim.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Is the building occupied? No, for some time now. Yeah.
At least a decade.
Yeah, so.
It's got that smell to it.
Yeah, so construction is also is not in that good condition.
A lot of the structures solid. Yeah, it's solid.
Okay, at this point, open up the board discussion.
So I don't have. It's a concrete block structure with brick veneer, and the superstructure itself on the perimeter is in what I would call good condition, but everything else is not. The history of this site's what's significant, I believe, not the structure. I can support the deconstruction with commitment to commemorate the history and significance. You know, back to 1911 with the Colored Young Women's Christian Association of Charleston. While the structure may not be significantly or may not significantly contribute to the architectural fabric of the area, you know, it does define the transition of residential to commercial because of displacement, because of the openness between the single family, what was single family residential, magnificent homes, one of which was removed. So I'm sure you'll take that into consideration with your design and how to do that. That's all
In thinking about this project, it does present an important and complex history that I think did raise a lot of questions as I read through all the documentation, the history of the site as presented by the design team and also preservation organizations and my knowledge of archival research. And I find it interesting. I would agree with you that on the architectural evaluation, I would concur with you, Mr. Metters, and with staff's comments that the current structure is not necessarily historic it's historic due to its age, but it's not necessarily historic or meritorious due to its style and its architectural details. It's also inconsistent with the existing urban fabric that's here. But I would also agree with the assessment that the site holds cultural significance as the city has stated in its importance because of its the longstanding presence of the YMCA and their community outreach, how they brought the community together, all of the significant impacts that they've had on the community. But this site also extends well before the YMCA was here. And I found it interesting looking at the different details that were in there. At the early 20th century, the plat identifies it as a burial ground, as we talked about. The Sanborn actually show significant transformation into kind of a dense urban neighborhood, at the turn of the 20th century. In the early 21st century, the YMCA was established there. And then by the mid-century, they built this building. But one thing that I also recognized as I looked at this is as this building was being built, and as you've seen in a significant amount of mid-century buildings, it coincided with the erosion of some of Charleston's historic urban fabric in order to build these buildings. They raised buildings at 102 and at 106 in order to build this, and took down significant other buildings, which are principles that I think are kind of contrary to what this board would look at today. So as I look at the cultural significance of preserving these physical materials, also look at preserving them in the way that they are existing on site, also contrary to some of the principles that we support now. And so that's part of what I'm struggling with as I look towards demolition, is that, if I were to say preserve these materials, then I'm also dealing with site strategies and developmental patterns that I don't think this board would support too. And so I don't know, those are the thoughts that I think I kind of had as I began to look at this. I appreciate your clarifying questions that you asked to the applicant. I think those were some that I had, and they helped alleviate some of my thoughts as I looked at how to kind of approach this.
I don't have right now anything. So
Well, I think just about everyone has been in agreement that the significance is not in the brick and mortar of the building. And the applicant has put forth an application that explains the history of the building. And I don't think anybody has stated that the building should remain. And I also have confidence, well, the PUD has a requirement about acknowledging the history. City staff has put forth a requirement that staff require the socio-cultural significance demonstrated in the BBL Historic Preservation Report be commemorated in a physical manifestation with a highly visible presence in the new construction project. So staff condition and the PUD condition, as well as the applicant's history at doing meaningful work, I think does weigh into my decision to support the demolition. So would anybody like to make a motion? Am I allowed to make a motion? I'll make a motion for approval with the staff condition. Second, ask for a second. Is there a second?
I will second that.
Seconded by Ms. Subject.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
would you, Linda, be okay with just adding staff and board comments to that? Not that there were any significant things,
Sure.
just for the record, you have.
Yes, I will edit my motion for approval of demolition with board and staff comments. Is there a second?
And staff condition one.
Uh,
And
Approval of demolition with board and staff comments and staff condition number 1. Is there a second? This subject? All in favor? I'll go down the line. Mr. Trantham? Your vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters?
Yeah, in favor.
The motion carries. Thanks for everybody for your time.
If you don't know, we'll vote.
The chair votes yea in favor.
they there.
I'm gonna get it right.
Thank you, Mr. Metters. You got ahead of me. I was just like, wait, did we hear from? Right, if you don't mind calling a short break while we switch out chairs.
Yes, we're gonna take a quick break to change out some of the members up here. Thank you.
Appreciate your question. You did an excellent job, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I agree with the income care. May have a future in it.
Okay.
Yeah, you sure do.
Just not tonight.
You know, it's funny story. Here. The lot of those who've been asking the person.
It makes the motion.
Second the motions and the.
Yeah.
Faces with bright shiny faces. And just for the record, I'll indicate that Mr. Brown and I have rejoined the meeting.
Mr. Ramos.
Mr. Ramos is running to the parking garage right now, and we will proceed to item number 4573 Meeting Street.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this is 573 Meeting Street. This is on the west side in Council District 4. This is a non-rated site. This is proposed for new construction within the historic corridor district. And what is before us today is a requesting final approval of the mock-up panel for the owners, which is 180 Place, and the applicant is LS3P Associates. And I feel like from a staff perspective, we want to just comment our condolences on the loss of Richard. Such a important member to the community, so knowing that y'all lost a member of the family, we just wanted to throw that out. Here's the site. I would say something about it, but there's not really. Here's the site, it's on Meeting Street, and with that, I think we're applicant presentation.
Thank you. My name is Dylan Towle with LS3P. As mentioned, I'll keep this very short because I don't have to press demolition or signage approval. So we're really excited, obviously, the progress that's been made on the project to have an affordable housing project coming to fruition in the city. And we appreciate the time the board and staff made the other day, albeit kind of warm in the morning, to come by and review the mock-up panel. I know the group at 180 Place is very excited to see this, like I said, progress forward. And we welcome any comments or questions you have on the site review.
Okay, any questions of the applicant?
I mean, yes. Dylan, I'm not sure who all went to view the site, but the metal coping at the cornice is fastened with exposed pop rivets. I don't know if that's the way it's gonna be or not, but, and then the edges of all the cut metal is exposed. The mitered corners on the window trim and the are secured with pop rivets. The trim above the bottom of the corrugated panel, it doesn't match the plan. So it's not the same. What you see on the site is not what's on the plan. And the trim above the windows does not seem to match the plans either. And so I'm not really sure, you know, when I went and looked at it, how and I brought my pictures to kind of put it beside it, and I looked just to see, am I misseeing something, but I'm not sure.
No, and I apologize. Can you clarify which two items you're saying different from the plan?
Let me show you the picture.
Sure.
I don't know if I can get pictures into the minutes here, but
Hold them up.
So we will ask member matters to forward those
Yeah, okay,
to
cool. That'd be
either Mr. Courtney or Mr. Thompson. Thomas, sorry, after the meeting so that we can just include those.
And Dylan, if you would, after seeing them, show us on the screen what you guys are
Referring to.
yeah, so actually they came up on my laptop, so this is better. So this is the top of the voice I'm talking about.
Yes, sir.
And you can see how this is hemmed and those two cut edges and they're just exposed. Aluminum maybe, and then there's pop rivet. And is that how it's going to be secured?
That's how we would like to do it. I think with some of the wind ratings we've got to secure at the top, I understand we can look at whether that would need to be preformed as an option with the roofer that's making that. But that's how we would like to see it, yes, sir.
Okay, and then there's another example here of just this exposed metal.
Yes.
Him just being raw kind of cut there.
Yeah, and that one, we talked about that on site. What he's referring to is where the two, I'll call it
That's the first
facades, right, where that orange metal panel piece kind of comes in between. That actually doesn't exist in that condition. It was just a, I'll call it weird instance of construction. It would wrap the same corner around the fascia as it turns, much like the upper one did.
Well, now this is just the window case.
No, sorry, the one you were showing previously, as far as the
Okay.
coping.
Here.
Yes, sir. Well,
So, okay, and then when we go down to the casing on the window, this
Yes.
is it with the pop. And
Yep.
and then this doesn't, I mean, this doesn't, when I look at that, there seems to be something here. This is the corrugated metal is going behind it, but I don't see that.
yeah, that's, and I'll, sorry, I'll speak in the microphone so I can explain that. So Yeah, as we work through the actual submittals with the shot drawings on that specific metal panel, that's essentially the J trim at the bottom that holds that and conceals the cut edge that happens on a lot of these panels as they fabricate in the field. So anytime, like for example, around the windows, we have that, or at the bottom of the panel themselves, when they're cutting those to basically hide what becomes a cut condition, there's a J track there, which are also used like a drip.
So
Drip in the bottom to allow water to still hit out.
Yeah, it's where you got an upturned J trim.
yeah, it's like this, and the plans, it's not, I don't, so, this is outside of my comfort zone. Maybe there's another version of it, but it's like that cut metal that's down there, then you've got that J channel, but that's where all that water's going. So the bottom of that panel exposed to all that water, I don't know. It looks more like on the plan, it's just a more finished edge as shown in the plan. And then the last one, I don't know if it's the last one. No, it's not the last one, but you can see this. I'm not sure about that condition. I couldn't really figure.
Yes, so that, sorry, I was referring to the two trim pieces that overlap to the head, and we did discuss that on site, and we're working with the contractor to look at doing that as a singular piece across there.
And the top piece here also, I guess it's similar to the top piece where the corrugated metal is
Yes.
down at the brick, but that's not shown on the plan.
No, you're correct. And like I said, those are items that we looked at further once we got into the shop drawings as well to secure the top of that and essentially hide the cut edges of the metal.
And the last one is just, I just took a random shot, and everything that's put together with the corrugated panels is all put together with exposed pipe rivets from top to the bottom, and then the window trim continued to be put across. And again, I have no comment about the vent or these other vents, as long as making sure they're compatible metals. They were kind of just sitting there on the mock-up. So I mean, again, the mock-up's representative of what we want, this should look like at the end, and that's not it. And so I'm not in favor of approving this mock-up. And you can say, well, no, that is it, then I think there needs to be a drawing change or something, because what's on the drawing is not what's at the mock-up.
Well, let's see if there are any other board comments. I doubt there's any members of the public that would wish to speak on this, unless you want to drum something up.
I'm sorry, I was just I meant just that.
Yeah, right.
My bad.
That's right. Any other questions from the board or staff? Okay, hearing none, is there any public comment regarding this? Okay, staff comments and recommendations.
Yeah, so staff supports and applauds what 180 Place does, and realizes that the materials selected were likely for reasons of economy, again, given the critical mission that 180 Place does and the limited resources that they have in which to do it. These materials have previously been approved by the board, and so staff is not going to suggest any alterations to the project that might affect its viability with regard to materials. It is noticed, and I'm going to apologize if some of this is in what Member Metters has kind of already said. I tried to follow along. I'm not sure that I made all the dots connect, so just bear with me. But it is noted that some of the systems used incorporate elements which might typically not be permitted by the BAR. Noticeably, this includes the corrugated metal cladding, which has the exposed fasteners that I believe Member Metters was referring to. In the mock-up, these are an off-white color. It's our understanding, though, that in the final actual construction, that these will be color matched to the building, and that will alleviate one of our big concerns. Sealant and caulking colors generally need to be restudied to more appropriately fit in with the adjacent materials. Again, just trying to keep a consistent blend. Fiber cement lapsed joints at outside corners and elsewhere are a source of concern in that these are prone to movement, and therefore we're concerned about water intrusion. Staff suggests using a cover piece of trim or some other appropriate mechanism. The staff also noted that the window panels contain small fiber cement trim elements, which are both knitted and butt jointed. Hopefully I said that correctly.
We got you.
These might be better as all butt jointed, as that would be easier to build in a tight fashion. The flashing at the top of the corrugated walls should be held tight against the corrugated surface and remain vertical with a hemmed edge. It's also noted that the through wall flashing projects pass the face of the brick. And while this has been the norm for a long time, many practitioners have gone to holding this flashing at the 1/4 inch back from the face of the brick. We saw this actually in the mock-up in the earlier review from 71 George Street. If this cannot be done, we would ask to please minimize the flashing exposure and hold it vertical and tight against the face of the brick with a hemmed edge. And then finally, brick could use a better cleaning. Guess that's an observation. And then, so our condition related to this mock-up would be that the applicant continue to work with staff on sealant caulking colors, explore ways of tightening up materials generally, explore eliminating the through wall flashing exposure, cleaning up the brick better, and refining minor constructability issues. With that condition, staff is recommending approval with any board conditions and the staff condition.
Okay, any applicant response?
No, I mean, I appreciate the feedback, all things that we've discussed on site as well, so.
Okay, board discussion.
On top of some of the comments by Mr. Metters, I had a few comments too from our site review. The fiber cement casing around the windows that were included. I don't know if there's a better way to do it, but it didn't seem to be in a way that could be held very watertight against the window. So I was a little, it just basically turned the fiber cement panel, the cut edge back into the window. I don't know if there's a better piece that could be used in order to do that. And probably add a stipulation, the wall flashing, or sorry, the coping cap over the corrugated metal panel is of a different color than the corrugated metal, that there should probably match. And that the brick, I saw it said use better cleaning, but I believe the tooling of the joints, to be specific, you know, it was the mortar was all over the brick face and on the joint was not very clean. So I'd probably make that a little clearer comment that was there. And whether or not those needed to be updated prior to, I mean, I feel like there's a lot of areas here and it might be nice to see those updates for actually approving this panel.
Okay,
Mr. Chairman, Chuck is the contractor.
that's correct.
They're capable of doing this mock-up. Correct. And I know everybody's thinking, but I think that it should be done to Dillard standards. And then reviewed again.
Okay. Any further comments or emotion?
So this is meeting state.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's all this, there are a bunch of different booths in construction here that is that what to anticipate on an actual building? I think like James said, Charlotte is capable to build proper model mock-up. So I'm not willing to support it. It's kind of like the same what we had in first application today. Same issue.
I think it's been more than just today. It's been previous panels
Exactly.
before. And maybe the applicant earlier and the applicant now are the unlucky recipients of the decision that they want, but we need the developers to understand that these are important projects for us to review and evaluate to a meticulous level as an architect and an engineer would. That's my comment.
Okay. Well, I agree with you all. Anybody got a motion? Yes.
I was gonna ask, can I ask one question as far as the material color, because I think this was back before we got into asking for approval material colors and all at board.
I think, yeah, I think where we are now that we've made that
Just the-
policy change, we're reviewing this for craftsmanship.
Okay, I wanted to make sure I had that for clarification. I appreciate that.
So
If I can make a motion for deferral of the mock-up panel pending correction of the issues and board and staff comments.
No, I was second, Mr. Chairman.
okay. All right, so I'll reread that as a motion for deferral, pending correction of issues noted in board staff comments made by Mr. Trantham and seconded by Mr. Metters. Is that an accurate take on it? Okay, so I'll go down the roll. Mr. Trantham, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Brown,
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters. Subject,
Yeah, but
I vote likewise. Motion carries unanimous.
I still.
Contact Lawrence and what we're doing.
Okay, next item, number 570 Romney Street.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this is 70 Romney Street. This is in the East Central neighborhood within Council District 4. This is a non-rated site. The building is circa 1952 in the Historic Corridor District. This is a request for a final approval of illuminated facade sign that was denied at staff level. The owner is 70 Romney Street LLC. Applicant is Charleston Sign LLC.
Thank you. I'm Alexis with Charleston Sign. We're doing the signage for Ferguson Home at 70 Romney Street. They currently have a non-illuminated sign facing Meeting Street, but they're seeking approval to have an internal lit sign to replace their current one for better visibility. This would basically be kind of what they have now, but just the letters lighting up.
Okay, any questions?
Are they open at nighttime?
I think it's just normal business hours.
Thank you.
Are there other examples of backlit signage in the area?
I think there's one, they've mentioned that there's a few, I know there's one close by Home Team. They have like open face neon. That's the only one I can think of at the moment.
Okay. Any further board questions? If not, I'll see, is there anyone in the public that wishes to speak to this? Come on, just drum up something. You don't have to. Okay, that said, we'll just move right on to staff comments recommendation.
Mr. Chairman, so this, as mentioned, this is an application that is appeal of a staff denial of the permit as illumination is not approvable by staff within this area. The BAR typically only approves illumination for businesses open after dark, and the Ferguson closes at 5 p.m. According to the Historic Corridor District policy, external sign illumination is to be a neutral white. Illuminated signs may be considered if they are muted in tone and brightness, where the submission demonstrates the signage is to be harmonious with the building and its context, and is aesthetically congruous with the size of the building. And then only internal sign illumination, which identifies the building, may be allowed. Color for the internal sign illumination, including neon or neon substitutes, may be considered on a case-by-case basis. With that consideration, staff is recommending a, if approved, condition that would be if the illumination of the facade sign is approved by the board, staff requires the signage to follow the Historic Corridor District policy related to illuminated signage, which I just read. And as this is an appeal of a staff permit denial, staff doesn't have a recommendation. Thank you.
Okay, all right, any applicant response to that? Okay, board discussion.
I drove by the site today, and around the similar context, did not see many illuminated signs. This sign in its existing location directly faces Meeting Street. And I think would significantly stand out, be against kind of the principles of the city, as they've been established and delineated by staff.
And residences too.
Yeah.
I believe, Section 8 housing and an apartment building.
I'll chime in and say we have been consistent with illumination for businesses that are that keep daytime hours. So I would be in favor of upholding the staff denial.
I agree.
I'll make a motion for denial.
Motion made for denial. Upholding staff denial. Mr. Trantham, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Made and properly seconded. I'll go down the roll. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters.
Yay.
Subject.
Yeah.
Mr. Trantham.
Yay in favor.
I vote yay in favor. Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Okay. Last item for the evening, 19 St. Margaret Streets.
19 St. Margaret Street is in the Wagner Terrace neighborhood, which is a part of Council District 6. This is a Category 4 building built between 1924 and 1932. It is within the historic materials demolition purview, but is also a part of the landmark overlay, which is actually why it's before us today. They are requesting conceptual approval for the renovation of the Crittenton House. The owners are the Crittenton LLC, and the applicant is Boyd Architects.
Okay, applicant presentation.
Do we click through? Or do we
Yes.
say-
Yeah, you click.
We're Rachel and Lucas Boyd with Boyd Architects, and we're seeking conceptual approval for the restoration and renovation of 19 St. Margaret Street. The building is currently a purpose-built home for the Florence Crittenton programs of South Carolina and is operated as such since its construction. It is located within an SR2 zone, and variance was granted in November of last year for use, allowing up to 15 residential units. Another variance was granted in December of last year for the removal of 2 grand trees. And just last month, the proposal was deemed to not be subject to TRC review. Prior to our involvement, the property was before the board seeking approval for the demolition of the accessory structure on the property. That application was ultimately denied, and this proposal includes maintaining and restoring that building. Next slide. Next one. So this shows the location of the building just west of Rutledge Ave and North Hampton Park. Next slide. And this is the survey, which shows the 2 existing building footprints and the trees, including those which are slated for removal. Next slide. Some photos of the existing exterior conditions for reference. Next. And some views of the current interior, what it looks like. Next slide. So the building was designed by John Newcomer and built between 1924 and 1932. It has undergone a series of changes over the years. The original structure is the 2-story, 11,500 square foot cruciform shape shown in blue in the bottom left image. It was originally built with double white brick exterior walls and 2-story covered porches within the rear knuckles of the building. In the 1960s, however, a series of expansions took place that include the infilling of those porches, which can be seen in the top 2 images in orange, as well as a 2-story, 1,800 square foot addition to the west wing, which is shown in green on the far right.
And then a little 100 square foot, 1-story addition with front east knuckle, which is the magenta shade. And then lastly, the construction of a 680 square foot accessory building to the west of the main building and purple at the bottom right image. So in 1997, the property was listed on the National Register of Historic Places. That application, along with a book that we have here, published in 2013 called Miracles on St. Margaret Street, have been terrific sources of information for us historically on both the building and the program. Next slide. So the original plan was to renovate the building into 12 to 14 flats with a fairly conventional common entrance, corridor, elevator, etc. After studying the building and the surrounding area, we settled on an alternate scheme that features 9 2-story units that are all accessed from the ground level. And this proves to be favorable for several reasons. Fewer but larger townhouse style units is much more in keeping with the single family residential character of the neighborhood. Parking also became a lot more feasible and comfortable. And the existing building features many ground floor entry points, which can be repurposed conveniently as the individual unit entries. Therefore, modifications to the building exterior can be minimized. And of course, by doing this, we have a reduction in common areas, corridors, trash chutes, etc. So on the screen is the conceptual site plan, which shows the general parking layout and site circulation. The final articulation of the landscape architecture is TP. Next slide. So here we have the existing ground floor plan for reference. Next. And the demo plan. You'll see that the exterior demo is really focused on 2 things: the various metal and concrete egress stairs at the back of the building and the infill 2-story porches.
The long lanes aren't really showing up, but everything demo is dashed.
Yeah, hopefully you guys saw that in advance. Next slide. Here's the proposed ground floor plan. This is where you can see how the 9 units will be entered and how they function. To modify the exterior openings as little as possible, 4 of the 9 units are accessed via the redesigned area that is currently the 2 infill porches. So we've consolidated the entrances as much as possible. The westernmost unit and the rear units are accessed through what is currently existing openings that have been massaged just a bit to accommodate side lights and more optimal placement. And the 2 front units are the only ones that are not entered directly from the outside, but are instead accessed through the original front door and a common small vestibule. If you want to go back real quick. You can also see here that the accessory structure, which is currently used for storage, the far right on the page, is planned to be restored and converted into private storage units for each residence. The only proposed exterior change there is the addition of the double doors at the back of the building, in addition to some painting and a new shingle roof. Next slide. This is the existing 2nd floor plan. Next. And the 2nd floor demo plan, which largely tells the same story as the 1st floor. And this is the proposed 2nd floor plan. There are 6 2-bed units, 1 3-bed unit, and 2 loft style 1-bed units. And this is just an enlarged proposed plan of the accessory structure. Next. So the most substantial architectural change to the exterior that's being proposed is the reconstruction of the infilled porches. The current condition is kind of what you see everywhere in Charleston with infill porches, sloped floors, subpar building envelope, etc. So our intent here is to restore about half of each area to being actual outdoor space and create proper conditioned space in the remainder, but to have the overall architecture read visually and function as a porch. So the opaque part of the facade seen on the screen is essentially what is limited to where the floor assembly and demising walls are. This creates a facade that reads more like spandrels and glass or porch union column and stands in contrast to the punched openings that make up the original building facade, much like a porch would. Furthermore, where there is not functional outdoor space, the openings are all articulated as Juliet balconies with 6x9 sliders, allowing the units to be opened up and get the feeling of a porch at least. Next slide. This is just an oblique view of the same. Next. This is a view of the proposed new exterior entrances at the back of the building. Like at the infill porches, these new entry points will be punctuated using stone cladding. Next slide. And just another oblique view of the same moment. So finally, the next 8 slides are the elevations. They show the existing conditions, demolition, and all the proposed changes. Just feel free to flip through those. The areas to be demolished are keynoted on the drawings and the corresponding photographs. Generally speaking, the vast majority of the building exterior is going to be retained. The plan does include the restoration and painting of all the existing windows, the repointing and repairing of the brick as needed, restoring and repainting all of the existing trim and siding, and replacing shingle roofs. So overall, here is our intent to have a very light touch on the exterior, given the rather dramatic programmatic change inside. And we believe the building's architecture is robust enough that it can accommodate this new use, and that proposed interventions will breathe new life into the general character and presence of the structure. Thank you.
Great. Any questions of the applicant?
So you've done a survey of the windows and doors, and you know what their conditions are. That was a nice presentation.
All right. Hearing no further questions, and there doesn't appear to be anybody from the public to speak.
The owner, do you wanna?
There are, you know,
Following that would be a challenge.
I agree. Staff recommendation.
Yeah, so the flooring, Creek Tin House, as mentioned, is in the landmark overlay, and so per our ordinance, in specifically section 54.226, the exterior of any structure or improvement, whether or not it's visible from a public street or right of way, shall not be altered unless a certificate of appropriateness has been issued by the Board of Architectural Review. The board, when passing on such a application, shall utilize the criteria as would be applicable if the property, structure, or improvement were located within the old and historic district. Staff visited the site to determine if the proposed work would be visible, and it was determined that the partial demolitions and subsequent new construction elements are not visible from the public right of way. Per the Secretary of Interior standards, the new construction elements make a clear differentiation between the historical architecture and the contemporary architectural direction, and has compatible scale and proportions with the historic structure. All renovations and rehabilitation work is approved with minor suggestions listed in the staff condition that I'll read in a moment. It should be noted that a signage package should be submitted and reviewed separately, and that a gutter and downspout is shown on the renderings but is not clear on the elevations. We are going to ask for some clarity regarding this. So staff conditions are as follows. While mortar is noted in the are noted to be an in-kind match, staff is to be sent a copy of the conservator's report identifying mortar and stucco components and mix ratios. The existing chimney on the southeast side is to be permanently sealed and made weather tight. Clear demarcation of whether the hardscape elements start or where, I'm sorry, let me restart that one. Clear demarcation of where hardscape elements start and stop is only diagrammatically shown. This will need to be clearly expressed going forward. And I don't know what the A010 code means, but I hope that you do.
It's a drawing.
It's the sheet number. Okay. I thought maybe we were going for some ASCII text or something and suddenly got into some programming language. And then site lighting is to be shown with fixtures and site photometrics at the FRBS. With that, staff is recommending for conceptual review with board and staff conditions with final review by staff.
Great. Any applicant response?
If we could go one by one, there was a question. Replacing gutters and downspouts.
Yeah, there was a gutter and downspout shown in your renderings, but it wasn't clear that was being shown on the elevation. So we just want to know what's happening there.
They'll be replaced, but with a different profile.
Okay, so we'll get updated imagery that demonstrates that, correct? Yes.
Okay.
That was our only,
Question.
that was the only question that staff had as a part of our comments. Everything else was more just statements.
Everything.
Okay. Board discussion.
Thanks for the project.
Yeah, I'll chime in here and say that it's has all the markings, great success. You're working with the buildings. You found that you're bringing this incredible logic to the plan that had been lost through all the years of print that's used. And the changes that you're making to the facade, to the building, are very sensitive and very elegant, and they're on secondary and tertiary facades just as we would want them. So I think this is an excellent proposal.
They're getting to do this work because y'all are supporting them, so thank y'all.
Yeah, looking good.
And it's nice to see the accessory building.
The chapel.
Still on the.
The chapel.
Yeah, the chapel.
That's right.
Still involved, and also I would be remiss, Mr. Summerfield mentioned the 180 place and what an impact it has had on our community. I think that we can say the same for Florence Clinton.
Absolutely.
As well.
I agree with all of those comments, and y'all stole my thunder. I think this is an incredibly good project. It's one of the most sensitive and successful that I've seen.
Thank you for finishing well this meeting, folks.
Got rough there for a minute. Go right ahead. Is there anybody would like to introduce a motion?
I make a motion for approval with board and staff comments.
Okay, so we have a motion made by Mr. Metters for conceptual approval with board and staff comments.
I mean, and I'm thinking about them with final approval to staff.
With final review by staff. Okay, so conceptual approval with board and staff comments with final review by staff made by Mr. Metters. Do I have a second?
I will second.
So Chuck, right, I'll go down the roll. Mr. Brown, how do you vote?
Yay in favor.
Mr. Metters?
Okay,
Ms. Subject?
Well,
Mr. Trantham?
Yay in favor.
And I vote likewise. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you all.
thank y'all.
BB is